Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of December 11th. Thanks for being with us. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Staff, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Sai,
Here.
Commissioner DeFever,
Here.
Commissioner Woodward,
Present.
Chair Williams,
Here.
and Vice Chair Amir is absent.
Great, thank you. Right before we turn to the noticed agenda items for the evening, we have an opportunity for just general public comment. If there's anyone in the audience or listening in online who would like to make a comment on any matter not on tonight's agenda, now's the time to do so. It doesn't look like there's anyone in the room who has anything to say. Chris, is there anyone online?
Chair, there are no comments online.
Okay, terrific. We'll move on to a staff briefing if there is any, or updates.
I have nothing. This is our last meeting of the year.
It
So I want to
is.
thank all of you for everything you've done for us to help us get through this year. It's been a little up and down. So we will probably have some text amendments next year in relation to both new legislation and also some things that we've noticed in the code that we'd like to change. So I have high ambitions for that to take place this year. Otherwise, have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year, and we'll see you in 2025.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for all of your hard work throughout the year and really you're all unsung heroes and we're very grateful to you. So it's time to sort of rotate our positions here on the commission and
You have the
we'll-
minutes before that?
Yes, the minutes. Let's do the minutes first. So those are the minutes of September 11th. Are there any comments or revisions to the minutes? No, these were our first action minutes and it was a very quick review. I don't have any comments. So if there's a motion to approve the minutes,
No motion. I'll second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the minutes are approved. Now we get to move to the election of the chair and vice chair. So I'll step down and make room for someone else. And we'll look for nominations. We understand that Vice Chair Amir, who's not with us, often we will sometimes we'll sort of rotate. The Vice Chair will become the chair. He is not interested in taking on that role right now, but is happy to remain Vice Chair, he says. So that's information for the public and for the my fellow commissioners. Any nominations?
So can we nominate Amir in absentia? Is that
As Vice Chair or as
Vice
Chair?
Chair.
Yeah, as Vice Chair. Yes, I'll start by nominating Commissioner DeFever, who would be the next in line to be Vice Chair as Chair. Maybe start there and then we'll go to Vice Chair. If there's a second or if all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So Commissioner DeFever, congratulations. And then we'd want to bring forward that motion or that nomination.
Yes, I'd be happy to nominate Vice Chair Amir for another term.
I'll second that nomination. And is there all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay. Well, we have our new leadership here. So typically I think we sort of turn it over. And you had indicated right before we got started that you were maybe going to defer, but it's up to you.
Yeah, I was not prepared to be chair already because of the rotation change. So if it's all right with staff, we'll delay the effectiveness to the next meeting, perhaps.
We can start that in 2025. That's fine, as long as everybody agrees to that. I don't see any problems with it.
That sounds good to me. We'll start fresh in 2025.
And thank you to Chair Williams for being willing to do that.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'll really savor the moment. So we'll turn now to the first public hearing agenda item, which is our ADU update. And we would love to hear more about that from staff.
So we do have a staff presentation tonight. Savannah Van Aken, who is our, I can't say new associate planner, but new to you because she has not been before you. She's been with us for about a year doing amazing work, and I'm really happy to have her. And she and Miriam and our other associate, Sam, really worked on this with me, sort of getting a second set of eyes. So I'm going to let Savannah do the presentation, and we're all here for questions.
Terrific. Great. Welcome, Savannah. Thank you.
Thank you so much and good evening, Planning Commissioners. Before you tonight is the repeal and replace of Chapter 16-52.100, regulating the accessory dwelling unit, ADUs, and junior accessory dwelling unit, JADUs. The purpose of this update is to account for the changes made to state ADU laws since June 2023 and to update the structure and formatting to make the permitting procedure clearer for applicants. Some of the changes include updating the zones that allow for JADUs, updating the permitting procedures and requirements for ADUs, clarifying the particular conditions in which the sale of an ADU can be executed, updating the height restrictions per state law, updating the parking exceptions per state law, updating the particular conditions in which multiple ADUs are allowed on a single lot, further clarifying where a JADU may be constructed, further clarifying JADU bathroom and entrance requirements, and updating the tree removal standards so they are objective and in compliance with state law. Some additional changes include updating important definitions, creating a development standards table that is easy for the public to read and interpret, clarifying objective design standards, clarifying what qualifies for ministerial review, including adding a roof deck as an example of a structure that requires design review and is not subject to ministerial approval, updating exterior lighting standards to be consistent with Section 16-30.70, and removing the procedural requirement to send a courtesy notice to neighbors, preventing future frustration and confusion as the approval of ADUs are not subject to appeal. A list of the changes were provided as Exhibit 3, and all of these changes can be reviewed through the red line document provided as Exhibit 2, showing the existing and proposed changes to the ADU ordinance together in one document. Staff recommends the approval of the draft resolution for the repeal and replacement of Chapter 16-52.100, regulating ADUs and JADUs as the changes clean up the formatting, making the ordinance more readable, and include changes that are necessary for compliance with state law. This concludes staff presentation, but we are happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you so much. And what a Herculean task this is. So thanks for all the hard work. Are there any questions on the report, on the briefing?
I have one question. I can't find the change that was made related to removing the notice provision. And there is a helpful chart, by the way. Thank you guys for doing that at the very end. It really kind of, that Exhibit 3 makes it a lot easier to go through it too. But I couldn't seem to find that notice piece.
Sure, it's just a simple part of the language, and thank you for that question. It's just a simple part of the language that was removed from the original draft, and you can see that in Exhibit 2.
Can you identify for me where?
Thank you.
Yeah, it just, this red line, but on page 15 of the exhibit packet, exhibit 1 to 3, and for the director's community development section, we revised it to add, the requirements for state law to add a full set of comments, not that's
So can you identify for me what page of 19? That might be an easier way for me to find. Okay.
At the top. I had a question. I'm a little confused about the changes in the JADU section. Just tell me if this is accurate. So the JADU must have a kitchen, but it must be an efficiency kitchen or larger, I'm assuming. It does not need to have a bathroom. That's a little strange in my opinion.
But yeah, under state law about. But that, yeah.
But, well, I think,
Because they
I
have
think
access, right? to
they have
the-
access to the main
the main
dwelling
bathroom,
and the
right.
main bathroom. It's not like they don't have a bathroom at all, just not
Right.
within the unit.
Does staff think that this creates a loophole for expansions on homes where they could classify them as JADUs when really they're going to turn it into an expansion on their house?
I think there could be a possibility of that. What I would say is that, for any of these ADUs, in some ways, when they're attached, yeah, within the existing walls of this ADU is within the existing walls of the residence. Like, it's not an expansion too. So they're not really getting extra square footage per se, but with any of these units, the way we look at it is we believe that people are doing it honestly and correctly. If they do convert it, we usually catch these things, and we catch them either neighbors or when we do an RBR. And, that is the way we have looked at it. We think of it as a new unit. We think that people are doing it with good conscience and honestly, and try not to question that part, because we don't really have that authority
So
or
there's-
ability either.
There'd be a permit applied for even for changing the home in this
Yeah,
nature, so
absolutely.
you'd see something.
Sure,
Got
we
it.
have a permit that would be existing, and let's say somebody goes and does do that. At some point in time, it has to be reverted back to the JADU when there is a sale, because we count it as that, as part of our housing units.
Okay, yeah, I didn't remember there not being a bathroom required the last time we looked at this, and I thought that was a little strange, so I wanted to ask your opinions on that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. It seems like the two would go together, actually, kitchen and a bathroom.
It changed. That
Did you-
changed.
Can't you have one
You
without
can't
the
take a
other?
shower.
Commissioner Fever, it did change from the last
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Cities can't make
Right.
it harder to build any.
right,
by adding requirements or that are.
yeah,
aren't-
well,
Make it easier.
Right,
Easier to
right.
make, but imposing a requirement that's not in state law is.
Right.
yeah, we're well aware of the history, and that we're not trying to, add anything more stringent here. That is not what we're looking at.
Any other questions or, yeah.
I
go-
have one
just- yeah.
follow-up question on the notice issue. Can staff provide some more detail about what was referenced in terms of confusion that's been noticed with respect to, I guess, neighbors who have inquired, I guess, about
So
some of these
it
developments?
has been very difficult. So we send out a notice. Mr. Smith is building an ADU. Ms. Jones next door says, well, I didn't get how are they doing this? Well, I want to stop. I want a hearing. I want to see what they're doing. And we just tell them, we're doing this out of courtesy to let you know, but you can't do anything about it. And so it's caused a great deal of frustration on the part of the public. From our standpoint, when we look at it, we spend a lot of time noticing, and then we spend a lot of time telling people, I'm sorry, you can't do anything about it. So it didn't prove to be beneficial in any manner.
Have you considered modifying the nature of the notice to provide some information as to the rights or maybe more importantly than the non-availability of rights for purposes of appeal?
It's already
or-
in there. It is already in there that is not an appealable action. It is not put before the board. It is a ministerial action. And we've found that that creates a lot of confusion on the part of the public, as well as a lot of anger and distrust for the process. Like, why are you telling me this if I can't do anything about it? You should notice me, because then I can come to a hearing, or I can, in some way be involved in the decision making of it. but if I can't, why are you telling me? So we felt that it was a great deal of staff time. And it also was a little bit confusing to the public.
My concern would be the opposite will occur when you're not noticing them. That they'll show up here at town hall and you'll have to explain it from scratch because they're noticing there's some building going on that they didn't know about. I know it's a catch-22 situation, but I'm not sure that removing it solves the problem. I don't know. Does it cite to, does it have language that details that, these were changes that were imposed by the state? Is there any? No, I mean, the reason they don't have an appeal, or any input?
We do tell them it's per state law. So it is very clear within the
It's,
notice
it's ministerial.
that it's ministerial, yeah.
Mm.
Under state law, accessory dwelling unit state law. So I would agree with you that we will have both. I just think from a staff time and just looking at it from what we have to do is we send out the notices, that's staff time. We respond to them, that's staff time. We respond to people every day, all day long. So responding to them about a development or about construction is probably something that we're so used to doing anyway. And that's why it obviously doesn't, we aren't precluded by state law to keep this in here. But I'm not so sure it's serving the purpose that, I guess from staff's point of view, we didn't really see that it was something that assisted the public.
What is the noticing requirement? So let's say I'm a member of the public and someone next door to me is making an adjustment to their house. If they got a building permit, don't you automatically have to notice the neighbors, or is there some sort of threshold with what type of permit it is, or?
Yeah, there's a threshold depending on what work they're doing with respect to both the permitting and any kind of hearing body or whether it's administrative. But in most instances, if it's something that we have to notice for design review and it doesn't go to the board, there still is an appealable process for somebody. But in this instance, it's not going to the board. It's not going before the planning commission. It's not appealable, but I'm letting you know. You can't do anything about it, but I'm being nice and letting you know. So, I mean, it doesn't hurt to keep it in there. We were just trying to figure out a way in which to kind of lessen the angst that we feel from people.
And you would still be available to respond to questions if people said, oh, something's happening next door, I'm going to call, go down to the town and ask. And of course, you would be responsive to
Absolutely.
those
And-
questions.
And, even though we notice, we still get those calls.
Right.
So
Right.
it's not really, I think the intent at one point was to let people know so that they wouldn't come and ask questions and they wouldn't be upset. They would just see this and say, oh, I
Oh,
can't,
it's happening.
but it's not really happening that way. So we thought
And
we
there'd be
would,
nothing, would there be anything precluding you from adding some notice requirement back in if you had, if you found that you were inundated by calls from people that
we
were
could-
complaining about the lack of notice,
we could do it without even having it within the ordinance. There's nothing that precludes us from sending out.
deciding as a
Yeah, exactly.
this policy matter or a just practical
Right.
matter?
Yeah, I would lean toward deferring to the staff's recommendation, but I'm a little
Yeah.
concerned for you that it'll backfire and you'll get people in town hall who are angry. They have no idea what's going on. So that's up to you. I think I will defer to your judgment.
And we have opportunity for public comment, correct? If there's anyone who wishes to call in on that matter tonight to say, hey, I really don't want to see this notice requirement removed. We can, after the question, the Q&A period. Any other questions from Commissioner Sy or DeFever? Yeah. I have just a couple of clarifying questions. One is on the calling out the roof decks as an example of something that's not allowed. Is there that, so that as I look at the red lines, so this is, it's crossed out on the red lines, page 5 of 19 on those red lines. Is this exemplary of, so that's number 11? It's, that's not permitted under this ministerial process, and that's 11, is that one example of 10 of paragraph or section 10 immediately preceding it? So that's just, you're calling out that one specific example. Here's something that's exemplary of. Is that confusing by just calling out that, why that one as opposed to others? Is that what you're seeing the most of?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That is something that we have seen repeatedly. And it's helpful and strengthens our ability to regulate this when it's specifically called out like
I
this.
see.
And so it allows us to have more strength in our word, and is a part of 10. And if it's clearer, we can make that an A to the 10.
I was wondering if that would be more clear, because a concern I would have is that people would think that's the only thing that's not allowed. So that's just a question for now, but, and a thought. And then, on page, so back also on the red lines. This is red lines as well, 12 of 19. And it's, oh, I'm sorry, no. I just had it. Yeah, it's 15. So it's section 15 on creek beds. And this is just so minor, and this might be just a statutory thing, but the title is creek beds, but then the language actually speaks to creek banks. And I think aren't those two different things? Like a bed versus a bank?
That was in the old ordinance.
Yeah.
We really haven't changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not looked at that at all.
Yeah.
So it could just be.
I think
Just
it
so
could
it's
be a typo.
consistent.
It could be a typo.
could be a
It might
typo.
be, I
Yeah.
think it is a creek
Yeah.
bank and not a bed. Thank you for catching
Sure,
that.
yeah, it's just, yeah,
Yeah, that's easy.
Could also just call it creek.
creek.
Although,
Although the language is actually speaking to creek
The bank
banks and
edge.
reference.
I know, but creek bed is like the title of that
Yeah.
section.
to just call it creek.
Yeah, in terms of that.
Okay.
title
All right,
consideration.
that's fine too.
And then, again, this is just, I'm not sure if it's a typo or if I'm just not reading it. So this is section, I'm sorry, again, the red line's page 18. And it's at the top under the subsection D. Where it just says the ADU complies with the requirements of section 6.2, let's see. Government, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, okay. Oh, so it'll be not, it's on 10 of your clean copy at the top. And then, again, just for consistency I'm gonna flip back to the beginning under definitions. Multifamily, multi-story dwellings, colon. Would it be more consistent to say means? Everything else is this phrase means, and that's just a colon. I think those were, there are a couple of other minor things, but they're so minor, just in some instances you'll say, within 1/2 of a mile walking distance, there's 1/2 mile. Like there's some areas where there's just, there could be some cleanup, but it's not, I don't think we need to. Well, there you go. Hey, you know what? In the grand scheme of things, these little minor typos sometimes are important, but yeah, but not always. Those are my questions. Commissioner Woodward.
I don't have any additional questions.
So I think I'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone, a member of the public who has any comments to these proposed changes? No one here with us? Anyone online?
Chair, there's no comments from the Zoom audience.
Okay, so I'll close the public comment. and return it back to the commission for deliberation. And my opening comments, I really have nothing other than the comments questions and clarifications that I got. I would be supportive of these amendments, of the
Um,
amendment.
There was one other section where I need to check that it's intentional or not. So in the redlined copy, the bottom of page 17, I don't know what this is. It says number 1 and then it says lowercase a. And it starts out with the ADU or JADU unit is within the proposed space, et cetera, et cetera. Is that supposed to be only JADU? I think this is the JADU section, but I'm having a hard time telling because I'm reading the marked up copy. Just to check that one. 17 at the. I'm not even sure which, hang on, I have to page back because this is the marked up, section D, JADU development standards. And so it's under under letter E, ministerial approval. Oh, that's E, so that's a new section.
It's a
And that's
totally
not
new.
almost happy.
Okay, so that actually works, because then I noticed as the section continues, it only says ADU, it really doesn't say, oh, maybe these are specific, hold on.
And here it is in the clean copy. It looks like that. It's a little easier to read through.
Okay, and then in the graph, table 1 in the marked up copy, this would appear in the footnotes at the bottom of page 7. It's footnote number 8 about garages and carports and parking. The very last sentence says these spaces may be provided as tandem parking on a driveway. And that begged the question of what if there is no driveway? Is it something, I mean, I think I'm taking from the context of the rest of the statute that parking is not to be required. But the way that says that makes it seem like you should put it in the driveway, but what if you don't? I don't know. It just seemed a little inconsistent, but maybe again, that came from the state. I don't know.
Things trying to be helpful, like. You don't have to replace parking. Here are some ways that you can if you like to, just, that kind of just I think that's.
When I was reading it as if, like if I was a person looking at one of these projects, I might get confused and think, oh, well, I don't need to replace this parking, but it looks like I'd have to put it in my driveway. So maybe it's the
It will
term.
not required, maybe will
Yeah.
not
It says,
required.
it says, that's why we put in may be
May, that's
provided.
Right.
So maybe
Right.
if desired, those may be provided. I mean, we
Maybe
could
we
change the
could
language a little bit.
revise it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the
Right.
language. It makes it sound like it's.
That's kind of
For the
that
layperson, they
legal
might think
term of
that's a
our, yeah, may
requirement.
versus shall, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
or legal principle. That if desired, these maybe seems workable.
Yeah, that definitely makes it sound less required.
Now, I just realized, staff, that I've not been tracking the changes that we've been suggesting, so I'm wondering if when we get to the motion,
We have,
if we
we have.
can have you, yeah. Any other comments? Any, in terms of supporting or opposing or recommending?
I can get behind all of these changes except for the notice issue. You know, what I'm hearing from staff as it's been described in the staff report as confusion, it sounds more to me that what we're talking about is the potential or actuality of frustration from some neighbors, maybe some actual confusion too. And to me, that almost seems like a reason to maintain the notices, because one of, I think, the most jarring changes to come about from the ADUs and JADUs is the ministerial nature of it, which is very contrary to how things ordinarily work, as the director well knows. In Tiburon, everything has some kind of appeal process. And so I think it is important for that reason, so that even though there might be some continuing frustration, that people understand as this law continues to kind of permeate, that this is happening. I think there's a second reason too we should consider, which is it actually might end up having a rather salutary benefit, in that more people learn about what's happening in terms of the ADU and JADU process, because it may very well be the case that some neighbors, upon learning of it, say, I actually want to do that to my house too. And that's what the transparency of notice provides. I think that the solution might, well, we will not eliminate, I think, confusion and frustration, unfortunately. I wish we could. I don't think we can. But I think that there might be at least some kind of solution in terms of how we rethink that notice, because it's not a mandatory notice, at least in the sense that it's otherwise required under state law. So it seems like it does provide some degree of freedom and thinking about how to notice it. So my suggestion would be we maintain the notice, because I think in a close call like this one, where there might be some frustration and confusion on both sides, I'd rather default on providing notice to people so they continue to know what's going on. And I share the concern that was expressed by our incoming chair as it relates to the potential in terms of that frustration, that it might actually end up being more for people who just don't, why didn't you tell me, kind of thing. So that would be my suggestion. Otherwise, including the discussion, the amendments that were discussed during the meeting, I can get behind it, but I would encourage us, with the one exception, that we take out the red line on courtesy notice. That is on red line page 4 of 19, subsection C of B, administration. So in particular, it's B3. B3.
One thing that just occurred to me, because initially I was also feeling very deferential to staff who are dealing with this day in and day out and have a pretty good feel for, you know, how their actions impact people and what changes might be effective. One thing that occurred to me as I was listening to Commissioner Sy speak is, given the changes that have been mandated by the state that are not, you don't have control over these changes, and yet you're kind of getting a lot of the flack. You know, people view them as maybe originating from the planning department, from staff. The one benefit of maintaining the notice and, you know, recognizing that maybe some language would be helpful, some additional language kind of really bolstering the point that this is not coming from staff, it's coming from the state. It does potentially, again, as Commissioner Sy noted, start to educate people that this is not a staff, these aren't staff decisions, these are state decisions. And so it's sort of protective of staff in some ways, in addition to, and I think might just in that transparency, provide people with faith in the process and faith in staff. So I do see some benefits to maintaining it. I also think that, given that you have some freedom to that, you know, this will be your decision to make, but really noting, highlighting, you don't have to, you know, ridicule the state explicitly, but just highlighting that this is coming from, this is state law, and, you know, it's a courtesy notice. We recognize there's not much to be done, but this is educational, you know, just kind of highlighting those points that, you know, Commissioner Sy has made about the just edifying aspects of this.
Yeah, I came in feeling the same way, because as we know, all of us sitting here, the state has been increasingly expanding its powers, so to speak, expanding what it is regulating and reaching down further into smaller jurisdictions. And empowering the citizens to know exactly what's going on is definitely always a good idea so that they can react accordingly, whether they like it or whether they do not. Yeah, and then what Commissioner Sy just said about, them having that information and also perhaps wishing to build their own ADU and understanding that that is happening in their neighborhood, that's something I hadn't thought of. So I am now feeling like I am aligning with Commissioner Sy's viewpoint. I am leaning back in that direction.
Commissioner Woodward.
Yeah, I'd be supportive of that as well. And I think just having been the recipient of some of these notices,
Yeah.
it is helpful to understand. And I think choosing our words wisely and thoughtfully, but easily referencing in compliance with state law. And, as a courtesy notice sent out by the town of Tiburon, I think there are specific choices that could be helpful. And then even going so far as to prepare kind of a standard document that outlines, so when people do show up, you can hand them like, hey, here's the background on the state laws. And it's painful to do once, but you only have to do it once, and hopefully can hand it out many, many times. That would probably at least address the majority, and maybe it's even an FAQ section on the website. Right, just something, but I think that our constituents would very much appreciate continuing to be notified, and it would feel like a little bit of the rug was pulled out from under them if all of a sudden ADUs, again, we're sort of hopeful that ADUs start popping up everywhere, but if ADUs do start popping up everywhere in your neighborhood and you've never heard anything about it, you might feel like you've missed something. So,
All right, well, it sounds like there's consensus on that point. I don't know if we're ready. I'm inclined to kind of move to adopt the resolution with the proposed changes. And if you're able to read those changes to us as part of this motion, that would be helpful.
Turn my mic on. Yes. So we're changing the definition of multifamily to make it consistent with the section. We are putting roof decks as part of 10, so as 10A instead of 11, making the creek section just creek, no creek bed or any other describer. Amending the half-mile section so that it's consistent, and in the table for the ADUs, being clear that changing the wording in the footnote regarding parking to say if desired parking may be provided on the driveway or whatever that, let me pull that up. And just making it clear that it's not required. And we are keeping the courtesy notice requirement with stronger language about state ADU law.
And I think there was just that one typo with the government code section.
Yes,
to
the
be
government code section.
eliminated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last because
Yeah.
sorry, I
No
missed that.
problem.
Yes, striking out the old
Great.
government code section.
Oh,
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so moved with those proposed changes.
I will send you that.
Oh, Commissioner Woodward just seconded and I spoke over him, so I want to amplify that. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion carries. And we can move on to the next public hearing item, which relates to 202 Trestle Glen Circle, request to amend the general plan land use and zoning designation of that subject property. Do we have a staff report tonight?
We do. Our consultant contract planner, Janie Alsep, will provide a brief presentation.
Great, thank you.
Good evening,
Hi.
Chair
Welcome back.
Williams and members of the commission. This is my first time using these new little controls here, so let me see if I can work through this. The item before you this evening is a proposed amendment to the general plan designation, the land use designation, and a zoning map amendment for the property at 202 Trestle Glen Terrace. The current general plan designation is planned PDR, which is Planned Development Residential, and it's proposed to change to medium-high density residential. And the zoning map amendment would be for the the property to be changed from planned development to an R1 conventional single-family residential. As noted in the last bullet item, future site improvements would be subject to a separate site plan and architectural review process. And that's at the end, but actually, it's important to note that the general plan amendment and the rezoning that's before you this evening and that will ultimately go forward to the town council is a prerequisite for there being any future development on the site. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that. But just to be clear for anybody listening or members here, members of the public here, the action before the commission is for the amendment to the land use map and an amendment to the zoning map to change the designations. There is no design review, there is no physical improvement before you this evening, but it is acknowledged that that is more or less the purpose of what we're here for tonight. So the property is denoted with a star. It's roughly, it is located very close to the intersection of Trestle Glen and Tiburon Boulevard. It's located in a neighborhood that was established in the 1960s. There's an existing single-family home on the property currently. This graphic outlines the overall property. And then this slide specifically highlights the 11,700 square foot area that is the subject of the map amendments. And I can go back through these in more detail, but I wanted to just kind of provide an overview and then more detailed graphics to show what we're talking about. So the property that is being rezoned in the general plan land use change is just what we're referring to as the easement area. And this easement area was acquired by the current property owners from an adjacent property owner back in 2018, and a lot line adjustment was approved so that it's all one parcel. It's my understanding that at some point the owners came in and spoke with the planner, and it was discovered more or less that, well, part of the property is zone PD and part of it is R1. And this proposed change or amendment is a cleanup to make sure that there's no confusion about what is allowed on the property. It's appropriate for the zoning to be R1 and no longer planned development. It currently has a planned development designation because it was at one time part of the Trestle Glen Circle subdivision. We have a lot of Trestle Glen Terrace, Trestle Glen Circle, which was a 3-lot subdivision off of Trestle Glen. So from staff standpoint, it makes complete sense to have these proposed changes before the commission and ultimately before the town council so that the entire property is under one consistent zoning designation. It really doesn't make any sense at this point for that easement area to be associated with the Trestle Glen Circle subdivision. It never really functioned as part of it. It doesn't function as part of it now. Again, this is just a slide that reiterates what the exact changes are, and just to reiterate that they are changes to the maps only. There are no text changes to the general plan or to the zoning code. It's simply the map designations. This is a snippet of the land use map contained in the general plan 2040. At this scale, the size that we're talking about is very, very small, but it's actually located right under the T in Trestle Glen. So you can see it. The lavender color is the Trestle Glen Circle plan development. So that little swatch of land, the easement, is currently the purple color, and it would change to the more pumpkin orange color, which is the medium high density designation for the general plan.
Can you say that again? The purple area you're saying is currently the RPD?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Correct. 3 lots, quite a bit of open space
That-
included in that.
So that's a lot of open space. That also includes a lot of existing houses, or is that all?
It includes
Both.
1, 3, and 5 Trestle Glen along with some open space.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of open space
It's
that's
very big
included.
open space easement at the top.
there is a lot of open space.
That's correct.
There is. So again, it's at this scale, it's a very small little slice right below the T in Trestle Glen that would go from the lavender color to the pumpkin orange color. And similarly, I put a star next to where the property is. This is the zoning map. So the RPD and the zoning shows up in green. And the change to the map would change that little sliver of property to the R1, to the yellow. There was a CEQA determination made for this, a draft determination of a negative declaration. An initial study was prepared to address the proposed change in land use designation. The initial study concludes that all potential impacts would be less than significant, and therefore a negative declaration we feel is appropriate. The negative declaration and initial study was circulated for public review and comment. We've received no comments on the CEQA document. We haven't received any comments on the project itself. However, I received an inquiry from the adjacent neighbor at 204, and the purpose of the call was to clarify what exactly the actions were that were being taken now, and that it wasn't part of a design review application. And so once that was clarified, I think it was understood that, what was happening. And that I reassured that owner that if they received this notice, if there are any future applications that require noticing, they will receive a notice on anything that comes up in the future. So that seemed to be satisfying to the neighbor. The Planning Commission's recommendation on the CEQA is included in the draft resolution. That's part of your action this evening, in addition to making a recommendation on the amendments themselves. So the staff recommendation is to hold the public hearing on this item and to hear and consider all of the testimony. And secondly, to adopt the draft resolution recommending adoption of the negative declaration and approval of the general plan and zoning amendments to the town council. This is scheduled to go to the town council in January, should the planning commission make their action tonight.
I have one question.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, go
We
ahead.
both have questions.
Yep.
I understand from the report that, and obviously it's termed as a view easement. Whose view? I mean, I'm looking at it's open space above it. I don't understand why it was a view easement in the first place, particularly since it doesn't seem to, under the CEQA requirements, impact any views. So just wondered,
So the view, the 11,000 square feet is what we're calling the easement area. The view easement is just a portion of that. It's just that little rectangle. I can pull it back up on the slide.
right.
I had the same question, to be honest, because I went up and looked around, I drove around, and I'm thinking, what view is this protecting and from where? I couldn't quite, since I didn't go up on the private property or the open space area, I assume it's a view down to the water from some point, just because that's usually what is protected. And it would be in favor of the prior owners who basically transferred or allowed the lot or that section to go to the other property.
So I think it's the case that the view is probably on the east side of it, because that land geographically goes up as you're looking at it. So I don't know if this is helpful.
I
but
think
you
so.
can kind of see.
So
We can't, I think.
I do think it had to do with 5 Trestle Glen, which is to the east, and it's up higher on a hill. And that was the property that was the owner of the property that
Yeah,
they did a purchase, and there's a little sliver got left over, but there is no view that's being there's no view being taken away by this.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe originally. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
So I have a follow-up question about the RPD issue. So is it the case, I assume, that there's a carve out in terms of what is not a RPD for the other houses on Trestle Glen Terrace, the ones that are south, for example, the next door neighbor that's just south of 202?
I'm not sure I understand your question about the carve out.
Well, I mean carve out as in euphemistically, not as a legal term. But what I'm saying is I'm assuming it's not the case that that entire purple area you described before is all RPD. For example, maybe it is though. For example, there are houses at Trestle Glen Circle. There are at least 2 houses there. There are houses on Trestle Glen Terrace. Maybe I should ask it as a question. Are those houses are zoned as RPD?
There are no other residences on Trestle Glen Terrace or with the Trestle Glen Terrace address that are zoned RPD. They're all R1.
If you bring up the map, you
Yeah, I
could
was
see
trying
that
to go back.
the area that you're speaking about, Commissioner Tsai, is the single family area.
Yeah, so maybe is my question making sense? I think I'm trying to, I think I understand what your point, by
Yeah.
the way. My question is about what specific area, because your chart has a kind of zoomed out
Mhm.
picture of the purple area, but
Mhm.
it doesn't have it with obviously hyper
I can't
specificity
get it.
there.
I would have
Yeah.
to pull it up.
It would,
And I-
yeah,
gotta go
feel free to
backwards.
pull it up and use
Go
the,
back.
your
Okay,
little
here we go. Here we
pointer.
go.
And I think the answer is, as the director said, is that it probably is the area that's just outside of the envelope of those houses. Like, for example, 5 Trestle Glen Circle.
If
Yeah.
the pointer doesn't work, would it be possible
think
to
it does.
walk up there and?
Yeah,
it'd
well,
be
it's
helpful
such
for
a
me to.
small.
There we go, there we go.
I mean, whoops.
Yeah,
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry, I pressed the
there,
wrong.
oh,
Yeah, that-
yeah, actually, that's the
Actually,
best, yeah.
The one before.
Yeah, the one, yeah, there
Okay.
you go. That, so just north of that designated parcel area is currently a house, and that, although not reflected on the map,
Right.
that is 5 Trestle Glen Circle.
Correct.
And then you can see north and east of that is the second one, and that's obviously
Mhm.
reflected there on the map.
Mhm.
I assume it's the case that when we talk about, I'm talking about the entire RPD area, not
Mhm.
just this one subject to the discussion now,
Mhm.
that the RPD area is that area just outside of the houses, because the houses, for example, 5 Trestle Glen Circle, the one next to
Mhm.
5
Mhm.
Trestle Glen, are all RP1 or whatever we're,
They're RPD,
Oh, they are
So
RPD.
They're all RPD.
that was my question. Okay, they are
Yes.
RPD.
So it's that, yes.
I understand. Thank you. Okay, that is what my question was. So
Okay.
I guess my question is why? Why, if the other houses are RPDs, then what is the benefit for conversion of this subject project parcel to be converted from RPD?
Because it's no longer a part of the Trestle Glen
RPD.
Circle
I'm sorry, go ahead.
development. So this was this swath of property was previously owned by 5 Trestle Glen Circle. It was sold to 202 Trestle Glen Terrace. So with that change in ownership, it became part of an R1 parcel, 202 Trestle Glen
Because
Terrace.
202 Trestle Glen is R1.
It's R1.
Yeah,
And
so
so it makes more sense
for
if you're going to have that
conformance.
piece,
So that
that
there's-
you, for lack of another word, meld them together or transition it or consolidate it into a R1. And I think that's what the intent here is that you don't want to have a house that you have an easement. a piece-
partially X and
Right.
partially
And
Y.
RPD does not relate to them because they are no longer part of that subdivision or precise
Trestle
plan.
Glen Circle.
The one thing I think I still don't understand, although I now completely understand what you're saying, in terms of the essentially 2 different things
Mhm.
on one, under one owner's umbrella. What is the difference in terms of what the homeowner can and cannot do by virtue of the multiple designations?
Well, my understanding is that if it were to remain RPD or PD zoning, it could mean that they're not able to do anything on that property because it's really it's no longer an appropriate zoning designation. The PD has its own unique set of rules and regulations that were developed for the Trestle Glen Circle property. And should I stop there and?
Well, that makes sense too, except that, and this is why I was asking you about the other houses.
Mhm.
5 Trestle Glen Circle, though, for example, is one of those RPD designated, right? So there weren't any issues with the building of that house.
Because it is entirely within the RPD.
Yeah, all the lavender area is RPD.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think then, if I cobble this together, I think everything you're saying, if I would try to, I don't want to be too reductionist about it, but I think what you're saying is that having multiple designations under single ownership creates potentially some inconsistency with what the owner can do in totality
One lot,
per
yes,
property.
it's single ownership on one lot, that you have 2 different zoning districts bifurcating.
Okay.
And I mean, as a planner, we would be going, we don't, you know,
What do we do?
it doesn't make any sense for this to be
They'll have to
RPD.
shed, right,
Yeah,
okay.
right,
Right.
so,
Can only put
Gotta-
the shed on one half.
Yeah.
you know, kinda like that.
Rationalizing this process.
Okay, thank you.
it's complicated in one sense, but very simple on another level. It's just procedurally, it seems like it might be more than it really is, but it isn't really that simple.
Well, it's just understanding why. I agree with you. It's simple. And simplifying it, reducing it down does make a lot of sense. I was just curious because it was really the why issue that I didn't quite understand for the.
It doesn't, so it'll allow the property owners to develop the property as well. But without this, they really can't do much with that piece of property. And that's why they purchased that piece of property.
See, that's what actually makes me confused. That last statement is what
Why?
confused me. Because 5 Trestle Glen Circle, which is also designated as RPD.
But they have a building envelope and they're part of a precise plan, whereas this 202 Trestle Glen does not have that because they are part of R1. But when they purchase this piece of property from 5 Trestle Glen, they get this little sliver of RPD that they're not part of the building envelope or anything that relates to it because it's simply an easement between the properties. And so therefore, the current property owner can't use it, include it, or do much with it. And I think, they're here tonight, but I think that their intent was this was going to be a lot easier. This has been a 2-year process because we've done the initial study, we've done the negative declaration. And I think we've come to the point where this makes the most sense from a planning perspective to be able to consolidate this sliver here instead of leaving it as this outlier that nobody's benefiting from.
And in some
that
ways, it's
make
sort of
more
a
sense?
quirk of circumstance in a way. I mean, this is just circumstantially over the years, this just evolved
Correct.
as a.
Right.
As a
The timing of things and how the
Exactly,
property has
exactly. It's
evolved.
Sort of an unintended consequence of some of these prior actions.
Right. I think when it occurred before, we might not have asked the right question.
Sometimes that happens through no one's fault. So is there an applicant here tonight who wishes to speak? Or- Yes, yes. So any further questions before we ask you to come up and state your name? Any further questions for staff? Did you? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we'll invite the applicant to come up to the microphone and state your name for the record. And I'll start. You have ample time. You don't I think we allow 20 minutes, but you don't need to take that long.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amber Cobridge. I'm the owner of 202 Trestle Glen Terrace. Makes things easier. So I'm here just to like to thank you for the staff that's been working so hard for the last 2 years, been working with us, preparing, recommending to rezoning applications. And we also agree with staff recommendation that we would like to happy to answer all the questions that raised during this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Any questions for the applicant? Well, we certainly appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Yeah, we have Mark Corbridge in the Zoom, so you might
Ah.
to answer as well.
Is this,
I've turned on the microphone for Mark Cobridge so
Okay.
he can join in as needed.
okay. And Mark is, I'm sorry, remind me, that your husband,
Yeah,
yes.
my
okay.
husband. So we are
Thank you.
Mark and Amber Corbridge,
Got it,
both
okay.
the owner of.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We can pause and
Mark, can you hear
see if he
us?
has any, if he's wishes to.
I unmuted Mark's microphone and he has permission to talk.
Welcome, Mark. We're here, ready to, if you have anything to share with us, any further comments, we'd love to hear them. But it's not required.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
There he is.
Hi,
Yes, thank you. I don't have much to add for what Amber said.
we're having trouble hearing you.
I don't have much to add from what Amber said. Just thank you to the staff for all the hard work.
Unfortunately, the connection is not very good, and so we're having trouble hearing you.
Okay, nothing special to say, so I'll leave it at that.
I'm so sorry. It's just very, very difficult to hear. Maybe you can text your wife. And she can speak for you. Okay, anything, do you think you have any sense as to what he might want to share?
Well, in this meeting, I like to state that our intentions to rezoning of the piece of land is give us more flexibility to build in the future, and also give like just consistency what this parcel is under one zoning designations. So it will give better for town planning to have a few what's the regulation that apply for this piece of land in the future when we came up with the design review planning. So that's our first intention. So during that 2-year process, we've been through all the regulation that we like to, and we come up with the idea to just rezoning first, because that's showing our best intention, what we're going to do with this piece of land.
Well said. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Great. Okay, well, I don't think we have any further questions. But thank you again for being here with us.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I'll now open this up for public comment. So I'll ask you to sit back down and we'll, if looks like maybe you're you have a family member here with you. If there's anyone else who wishes to speak or anyone online.
There are no public comments, Chair.
Okay, so no further comments. So I'll close the public comment and return to the commission for our deliberation. So Commissioner Sai, I'll turn it to you since you have had a lot of questions and see what is your current thinking?
I have all the questions and I really have nothing more to say. No, this all makes
Process, yeah, it was like more confusing. This was a little more complicated.
the gestational process can take a while.
I'm glad we could help you though.
Thank you. No, my questions have been answered. I think it does make a lot of sense that it's a confusing patchwork right now of zoning on an interesting piece of land. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to combine it and unify it into one. And I'm ready to support this application.
Just moving down to Commissioner DeFever.
I have similar thinking. I'm grateful for Commissioner Sai asking those questions, and also, while listening to the questions and the answers, it helped me process the information. It just seems supremely logical to do this. It will help the homeowner, and I don't see any negative impacts in any way on any other constituents. So I would be in support of the resolution.
And Commissioner Woodward.
Yeah, I was fascinated by the background and history of this lot and the idea that neighbors actually came together and granted, previous owners, general recreation, privacy and landscape easements. I mean, We never hear that. So really cool. And then the fact that they actually divided the lot, and maybe afterward you can tell us how it came to be that you were able to acquire a small sliver of land adjacent to yours. But I think it's great. It makes perfect sense to put this together and be able to expand the home from a kind of maybe what Commissioner Sy was going down the path of. I do take comfort in knowing that obviously anything that they do from here on out will have to come back, go to design review, potentially come to us depending upon what it is that they look to do. It looks like they've already got plans and thoughts around that, but there's a whole process for it. And also take comfort from the fact that there were no comments from the public in terms of this, maybe a clarification. But so I feel very comfortable with where we are and the questions that were asked and answered.
I really appreciate those comments as well. I too take comfort from those circumstances and thank you for articulating them so well. Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of those cases where you have a series of really reasonable, rational actions that kind of created an irrational circumstance. And now we're just, staff, thanks to staff over 2 years, working with the applicant has come up with a kind of an elegant solution for working through that problem. So I'm fully in support of this application as well. And I believe in this instance, we're actually recommending to the town council approval of these amendments. So I'll make that motion adopting the resolution recommending to the town council
I'll second.
approval. All in favor?
Do you need to?
Oh, and do we also need to, as part of the motion, adopt the CEQA
CEQA.
finding? Yeah.
Recommending.
So that's right. Thank you. Recommending the adoption of the
The negative
CEQA
declaration.
negative declaration.
I'll second that
CEQA
as
finding.
well.
Great. That's part of that was, I retroactively make that part of my original motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And this motion passes. Congratulations. And now we'll turn to, we have a third item on the agenda that I understand will be continued.
It will be continued to January 22nd.
And so I think we need a motion to continue.
Yes.
Yeah. Who wants to make the motion? Second?
I'll
All in
second it. I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And that will be continued to January and the meeting is adjourned. The last little tap of the gavel.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know, chair and chair. We're like at simultaneously chairs at one time.
That's right.
It's your chairs.